Good Witch, Bad Bitch. It's Luna, and I have a guest today, and I'm so freaking excited, you guys. I have Angelica, and she is the Legacy Witch on Instagram, and I will have all of her information in the show notes as well. But say hello, Angelica. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I love the show, and yeah, I can't wait to chat.
Yeah, thank you. I am like so excited because I've been following you for a very long time. I'm not sure. I think I found you through Captolia, but I'm just like so into your energy. And most of you guys who know me know that I work very exclusively with female deities, but I'm not opposed to male deities at all. I'm just like, I don't know. I think a lot of us ladies have had bad experiences with men, and so we're like, ew, especially the idea of like a patriarchal god, like coming from a Christian background. It's like, it's something that I think there's a lot to be healed around. So when I see like a beautiful, powerful woman who's just like, fuck yeah, that's my shit, I'm like, okay, let me learn about this. So I already know about you. I would love if you could just introduce yourself and let everybody know like your vibes, like how'd you get here?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm Angelica Cresci. I'm the Legacy Witch. I am the High Priestess of Hades. So I work very closely with Hades from the Greek pantheon, the Lord of the Underworld. And then in my client work and stuff like that, I'm like a life coach for witches and leaders, as well as just, a tarot reader and an astrologer. And I weave that into coaching and all that type of stuff. But how I got here, for as far as like masculine deity, I guess like I just always was really drawn to deity work. And I think it's funny, I have like the opposite experience because I don't really work with like feminine deities or like divine feminine goddesses. I just hopped into paganism when I was like a teenager. I live in Salem right now, Salem, Massachusetts.
I'm so jealous. I know, and I'm so angry. Like, what a blessing to be there. That is so cool.
Yeah, and it was amazing growing up. I grew up like in the Boston area, and so we would go to Salem on the weekends. My dad was like a local historian, and he was really into the just like the history of the area. So we would go on like little tours and things. And I was just like wandering in the shops, and I was like, whoa, paganism's a thing. Like it was always just a thing that you could do. And I knew people that were pagan in my life sort of growing up. And so I was raised Italian Catholic though, but it was like Catholic light. It was like as sort of as like lightly, just a little bit of saints and like, some holy water, and that was basically it. But I just sort of started learning a little bit more about paganism, like as a thing that I could do when I was like 14, 15, 16. And the first thing I thought of was, I feel like I know who my god is. And I had always had this connection with Hades since I was like a child. I'd always loved that myth and all of his other sort of attributes. And I was just like, I guess we'll just start there. And that's sort of where it started and where it ended.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Because I was curious. I feel like Hades is like, he's like big guns. Like that's a big guy to just like step into like for your first time. I love that though. I always ask, and so I'm just curious, what's your big three?
Oh my gosh, of course. Yeah. So my big three, I am a Capricorn sun, Sagittarius moon, Capricorn rising.
Yes, I love that. And this is funny, you guys listening don't know this, but like a couple months ago, I messaged Angelica and I was like, what's your big three? Because you're giving me Scorpio vibes. But then when you explained it, I was like, oh, dude, you're so Capricorn. Like, with the legacy training and everything, like, oh, I love that. Capricorn is like one of the most, it's very separate from any, like it's my midheaven. But other than that, I don't have really anything in Capricorn. It's something that I love, and I'm just like so into that. I really want to embody it more. So I'm just kind of obsessed with Capricorns. I just love the energy.
Yeah, and Scorpio is my midheaven, and I think that's probably why you thought I was a Scorpio or like had Scorpio energy, because the midheaven is the it's your legacy and it's your public image, right?
Sure.
So it's sort of how people see me, and it's sort of why I'm on the internet talking about like the occult and the underworld and like scorpionic themes, and it's my my public image.
Yeah, it definitely comes off too, like with the red brick wall and the very like contrasted vibe. So into it. Well, cool. So I was also raised Catholic, and I think that's something I was just talking about this the other day. I think it's so funny for people who were raised Catholic who then go into paganism, because like it's actually not that different. Like Catholicism is spooky as hell. That shit's crazy. So then jumping in and like with all the like saints and stuff, having multiple people you pray to is not that crazy, as opposed to somebody who was maybe Baptist first. So I think that's really cool. And I like that it doesn't seem that like you had any distaste towards like a god, which is something that I think, I'm not sure why I had that, but it's something that I think is really interesting. And I think that gives you like a really good clean slate to like describe what it's like working with a male deity. So you said that you like just knew Hades was kind of like your guy. What, like, were there signs, or were you just, because my only, I want to share this, my only experience with Hades, besides what I messaged you, that was really cool. A couple weeks ago, I had a pretty cool experience, but straight up, when I think of Hades for like the entirety of my life, I really picture from Hercules, like with the blue hair. And here's I fucking loved him. He was my favorite character. I was like, this dude's spicy. And I know that's so far from the reality. So I'm really interested to hear like your, like how you got connected with him and what his energy like feels like.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because the Hercules, and this is just goes back to my Italian upbringing, my Italian Catholic upbringing, is I was like raised by my Italian grandparents because my mom worked and my dad worked, and we exclusively had movies in Italian. Like, I don't even know where they got them. They were like falling off the truck or something. I don't know where they got these like bootleg Disney like Italian movies, but we had Hercules in Italian. And so I never got like to experience like the American like Disney Hercules with like the almost like the New York accent, like the blue hair. I just knew the blue hair, but it was in Italian, so I was like, I don't even know what's going on. But yeah, no, I do really, I think I prefer the Disney Hercules over Hades, over like other people talking about him, because I just feel like he has more personality and is more like jolly. And I do feel like Hades has that. But yeah, you're originally asking me, right, like how I sort of got into working with Hades. And there definitely were signs in my childhood and when I was a teenager. It was interesting because I had so many different experiences that I tied later together. Like I sort of mapped them all out later on. But one of them was I was watching The Corpse Bride, and Corpse Bride came out, I think, in 2004 or something. And so it was like I was really young. I was probably like 7 or 8. And I was watching The Corpse Bride, and I just remember like bawling my eyes out during the movie. And I was watching with my older sister and my mom was like, what is the problem? Like, I know it's kind of like, is it scary? Like, are you scared? Because I guess it was like a spooky movie or whatever for a kid. But I was like, no, I'm just crying because I know that like, I'm from there. Like, I'm from the underworld, or like the afterlife. Like, that's where I'm from. And my mom was just like, okay, yeah, I mean, that's fine. That's kind of cool. And I was like, no, you don't understand. And for like weeks, I was just going on and on about that. And then there was another experience in my childhood where I would always see like a guy standing in my room at night, and he always had this like helmet on. And it was almost like this, like, how kids see ghosts and stuff like that. It was like, I sort of at the time was like, Mom, there's like a guy with like black clothing and like long black hair, and like he was wearing like this like helmet, and I could like see his hair underneath. And he just looked almost like, you know, very regal, but at the same time, he looked like he was wearing like almost like leather, like armor, or like some sort of, you know, like battle, like uniform with this helmet. And I always just felt like he was watching over me, like just sort of watching me. And when I would stare at him, I would kind of blink and he would like disappear, but he was always in my room at night. And come to find out that in Hades's myth, or in one of them, he has like a helmet that he wears when he comes to the mortal world that that makes him invisible. So I was like, that was Hades with the helmet in my room, and I could see him because I was like a child.
Right. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, I love that. Okay, cool. Well, okay, I like realized we're going to talk about the divine masculine, but I was just so excited about Hades. I'm just so pumped to that. Like, I think that's just so cool. So we'll talk more about Hades, but thank you for sharing that story. That's really cool. Was your mom, because I had an experience where I was seeing like shadow people, or I don't know who it was, and I told my mom, and she's like, no, you didn't. Were your parents like into spirits, or were they like a little passive about that?
My mom was into it. My mom like has always been kind of psychic, and she used to read tarot cards when she was like in her 20s and 30s. She doesn't anymore. I don't really know why, but she's very into like all this stuff now. Like she's very proud of me and is like, oh yeah, my daughter's a witch and this and that. She'll like tell all sorts of people. She's like a hairdresser, and so she's always like telling all her clients, like, yeah, my daughter's a witch. She does it professionally, and it's like super funny. But so yeah, she was fine with it. I think at the time she was a little bit more like, all right, kind of weird, kind of strange, but like, you know, maybe don't tell people, but like, you know, like I believe you.
Yeah, that's cool. That's so awesome that you've had so many of those symbolisms of him come through from such a young age. I think that's really telling. Okay, cool. Let's talk about the divine masculine, because again, like I have so much I could say about it. I think that a lot of my personal wounds are around my masculine. I think I was very masculine growing up. And then I just kind of started to, I think a mixture of capitalism and other things, toxic masculinity and work culture in America, it's like kind of created a lot of like toxic masculinity, but not in the same sense within, I think, a lot of us, just like really unhealthy view of success, work culture, like the hustle culture, things like that. And I think so I think that's kind of the reason I get really deep into the divine feminine, because it's something I've had to be very, very like conscious of and like really work towards it. But I think there's a lot to be said for creating a healthy divine masculine within you. And that's something that I really struggle with. And I don't like have anything to say to my audience about it, because I'm still like deeply healing that within myself. So you seem so integrated within your divine masculine. So I'm curious about like how that's been for you, and especially with like hustle culture and success and things like that. Like what is a healthy divine masculine? What does it look like? How do you heal it?
Ooh, that was a lot. Oh my gosh. No, I love it. This is like so good. Yeah. Well, I think I really like everything you said. And I think that it is still definitely like a process, especially being such a Capricorn. Like I have huge Capricorn first house stellium, and it does sort of make me quite like hustly and like, okay, we got to work, we got to do this. But I think that's where like almost like the legacy part of my work comes through and comes from, because I really do see like a healthy, healed divine masculine energy within yourself, and like a healed sort of like hustle culture mindset is, instead of like thinking, okay, we have to just do everything right now and like we're working harder, not smarter. I think of it more as like, okay, I really want to like set myself up so that everything I'm doing is adding to what this like greater like, you know, legacy image is. And I can sort of work on things intermittently and sort of build up this long standing legacy. And so everything I do is very strategic, and even the projects that like I haven't even I haven't released it, I haven't talked about, it's like everything is just has a certain amount of strategy to it, and I think that comes from me being really integrated in my masculine side. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that, and I love everything that you talk about with legacy, because it's so weird. I was like, when I found your page, I was like, why have I not been thinking about this shit? Like, yes, that it's like, it just put into words something that's really near and dear to my heart. Like, what the fuck are we here? Like, why are we here? What do we want to leave? And I think that oftentimes we get so stuck into like goal, this is my 2-year goal or whatever. And it's really been beneficial for me to seeing your content, ask myself, like, what is the like overarching thing? Like, what do I want to do? And I know you do like tarot and astrology within your legacy coaching. And I know that because I commented on one of your posts a while ago that I have Saturn in my 12th house of Aries. And you were just like, ooh, you need to implement good habits into your life. And I was like, shit, you are so right. So I'm really curious about the integration of like astrology within like legacy coaching. Like, I guess I do astrology readings as well, but I've never looked at it as a form of like how this correlates to your legacy. Does that make sense? I'm curious, like how you.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm just like so in love with that Saturn placement, because the two interesting things about that is, first of all, Saturn loves being in the 12th house. It's like his joy, like he just adores the 12th house, which is kind of fun. And I think it's because he can he can get a little bit more into that like Piscean energy that he's usually not in, and he can sort of like let loose a little bit and sort of like, because I think of Saturn, which is a big part of like legacy and astrology, as a little bit like, I don't think of him as quite such a horrible planet, or like, everyone's like, oh, the planet of limitations. And I'm like, we're able to, we're able to like create beauty in our life because of limitations, and because of things that sort of create a little bit of resistance for us, and like some roadblocks. But Saturn loves being in the 12th house. And then I love that he's also sort of in his fallen Aries, which I think for the malefics actually kind of almost can strengthen the malefics, him and Mars. I think that when they're in detriment or exile or in their fall, there's almost like a little bit of an ease of the energy, because they're so like, when they're in a placement that they feel really comfortable in, like Capricorn or something like that, they're very strong. So anyway, and I have Saturn in Aries too, so I'm just like, oh, cool. Saturn in Aries. I love Saturn in its fall. But yeah, no, I just love your placement. But no, to answer your question, I mean, I really look into areas like the 10th house, the midheaven, the nodal axis. I do like to check, like, the planetary dignities and things like that, to see what planets are really heightened in the chart, see what is happening. I kind of take like when I do, my astro coaching, my legacy, coaching work, I really do like make the chart a huge part of every session. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about, the moon sign with your motivations and what truly motivates you. Let's look at the modes, are you cardinal? Are you fixed? Like, how do you get things done? And it all just gives a pretty good picture of like how this person's life could be laid out, right? Because that's sort of what we try to do with legacy work, is like, how do I want my work to be laid out? And legacy is partly, other people's perceptions of you. So it's not always something that you can really control, but we kind of go through the things that maybe we can control. And that's what we focus on.
Yeah, definitely. So I loved everything you said about Saturn and Aries 12th house, because when I first started doing astrology, I got my first astrology reading done by somebody else, because I was like, I probably need to see what other people do before I start doing my own. And I have a lot in my 12th house. I have my Sun, Saturn, Mars, and Mercury all in my 12th house of Aries. And the lady said, she was like, well, your Mercury and your Saturn are conjunct, so you're just gonna have a really hard time like ever like communicating yourself properly. And she didn't give me like any advice. She's just like, you can't speak, that sucks. And I was like, fuck, that's not cute. Like, I hate that. And so I love that you're talking about how, like, first of all, Saturn's not like, people do really say mean things about Saturn. I always view Saturn, I think Saturn and Capricorn kind of just as like daddy energy, like sugar daddy. So that's less intimidating than like he's mean and limiting and all that stuff. So I always appreciate when fellow astrologers are like, there's so much more than just like this really weird limiting like interpretation that just makes you feel bad. Like there's always, there's two sides of it.
Yeah. And Saturn is like a really, oh, sorry to interrupt you. Saturn is like a really interesting mythological character. You know, he's Kronos, he's Hades's dad, that, you know, ate him and his siblings, you know, all the siblings, Zeus, Poseidon, like, and Demeter and Hestia. You know, he consumed them all. And it was because he got this prophecy that his son or one of his children was going to become the new king of the gods. Kronos used to be Saturn used to be the king of the gods for the Titans. And then he didn't want that prophecy to come true. So he just sort of got rid of all his children. And so we think of Saturn as like this, you know, it's the planet of limitations, the planet of time. But Saturn himself, like, hated time, like hated the very thing that he ruled over, because he was like, I'm running out of it, right? And so I think that Saturn has this like, almost like he consumed his posterity. He has this very self defeating sort of behavior where he is the god of time, but then the very thing that set time into motion, or set him, you know, like made him have to like step down, was time, right? That's what made him had to step down. And he just he had a really difficult time with it. So I always say, like, the things that Saturn struggled with are the things that we struggle with, and we have that in common with him.
Ooh, I like that. I like that interpretation a lot.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah. Okay, cool. I have so much stuff. I have so many things to talk about and to ask. This is really fun. Okay, let me think where to start. Well, first of all, thank you for explaining that, because like I said, I don't know much about Greek mythology. I did just buy this book called Saturn, A New Look at an Old Devil, I think is what it's called. And it's a book that's like all about Saturn placements in astrology. And I think it goes into a bit of the mythology. I'm super excited to look into that because it's just so like advanced and I love that. But I'm interested in everything, but let me just really quick ask some more about like using the divine masculine within your career and specifically, you know, like in a healthy way. Like we kind of talked about, like, I don't know, it comes very naturally with your Capricorn energy, but I find myself very like, first of all, Aries sun, Pisces moon, there's a lot of shit happening like all the time. But it seems like I always overexert myself in work and then get burnt out, and it's just like a vicious cycle. So what would you say for people out there who feel like they get burnt out very easily, or they haven't been able to like find a good balance within their masculine and feminine? I know we kind of touched on this a bit earlier, but more in like a career sense, like how does that work?
Absolutely. What I would really do is figure out what mode in astrology you have most of in your chart. So there's cardinal, fixed, and mutable. Those are the three modes, or like sometimes they're called the triplicities. And I'm very cardinal. So that's like Capricorn, Aries, Cancer, Libra energy. And I have, you know, I have Capricorn as my first house. So it's, you know, I'm angularly on my angles. That's how we would say it in the world of astrology, I'm angularly cardinal. And that's typically what your mode is. So whatever your rising sign is going to be like whatever mode that corresponds to is going to be, for the most part, your mode. I mean, sometimes the sun and the moon and, other placements can create like a secondary one. But anyway, I would figure out what that is and then sort of like look into how that mode works. So cardinal is known as initiating, mutable is dispersing, and fixed is sort of like sustaining. So if we think of it as like all of them as fire, like I just like to use that mental image. It's like cardinal is like, it's like the torch. Fixed energy is just sort of like a nice like roaring fire. And then mutable is like a wildfire, just like it's everywhere. It's like dispersing. And so I, as a very cardinal person, I'm initiating, right? And so that's what I do best for my clients. I'm like a catalyst. And then for my personal work, I really like to work in bursts. And if I don't feel like the fire in me, then I just can't do it. And some people might think it's going to like, oh, burn me out if I just like work straight for like 2 weeks. But sometimes that's just, if I have the fire, that's just what I want to do. And then I just rest for 2 weeks, right? And it's very almost like anti-capitalist or anti like what we think of as like the work culture in this world. I would say like that's like fixed energy for the most part. So if you are very fixed, you might do very well with like a 9 to 5 or something like that. But if you're mutable or cardinal, there's probably a different type of work-life balance that you naturally have that feels really like the culture doesn't support it. And I would just like give yourself permission to create your own schedule if you're able to do that, and be okay with maybe taking a lot of time off if you need to.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. I love everything you just said.
Yeah.
There's like 5 times where I was like, oh my God, yes. Okay. So I think that I am, I'm a Taurus rising, but I think I have so much Aries that I think I am heavily cardinal. And what you said about like getting those bursts of energy and then having to rest for 2 weeks, that's so like resonant to my experience. And I think that I get burnt out just when I am forcing myself to like work this time to this time every single day and then like break at night. It's like, that's not, it's more about just leaning into your intuition and like what feels right. What, I think just like working when it doesn't feel right is just not good. And that sounds so like duh, but I think, just years of capitalism, it's just, you go to work, you do what you have to do, even if you don't like it. But we've strayed far as humanity with capitalism. It's not cute. But yeah, I loved everything you said about that. That's really interesting. I loved that. Okay. So I have one thing that I really, really want to ask you, and I want to make sure we get it in. So moving back to Hades, because I'm just very interested. And I feel like you're just like this big book of Hades information. I think it's so cool. There's so much. So, okay, you mentioned that you do see him as more playful and stuff kind of portrayed in the movie Hercules, but I have seen a lot of information from people, and I don't know their sources, maybe like there's someone on TikTok, who cares, but it's just people who really like kind of demonize him, make him seem very scary. Obviously, I think people who were raised Christian or Catholic or, anything like that, maybe just have a knee-jerk reaction to any sort of underworld character. And I do feel like that's just really skewed in hate and just fear, I guess. So I'm really curious, like, what is he underneath everything? Like, what's the tea? He seems like a cool dad.
Yes. Yeah. And it's so funny because a lot of like people, when they start working with Hades, usually people in my like Hades group, House of Hades Society, will either be like, he's like my dad, like my cool protective dad, or he's like has like major sugar daddy energy. Like,
yes, I love that.
Those are like the 2 things I always hear. I would say for me, it's like he's very stoic, but it doesn't necessarily translate to like everyone saying he's like gloomy and like really like, almost like a downer and like just really, really intense in like this, almost like dark way. I don't think he's those things, but I would say he is very stoic. He's very calm and protective. And I mean, he does laugh a lot. Like, he is kind of has that fun, almost like sensual side to him, like scorpionic kind of funny side. But I would just say he's a really calm presence, to be honest. And that's why I think he is so like loved by the people that work with him. He's very kind. And he really like hasn't had followers for like a long time. This is like the first time in history where he's had like a substantial amount of devotees and followers, which is so interesting to me. In ancient Greece, I mean, like he had like every temple to Hades, which there was like a couple in Greece. There weren't even many. There was like 2 or 3. They only all of them only had one priest, and it was typically a man, which is interesting. But one priest, and he would go into the temple one time a year to do some sort of like death, ritual for Hades, and then you would come out and then you wouldn't see him for like another year. And that's just the Hades devotion of time. And so it's just so interesting that like he's so eager to work with people, and he's so like excitable when people start calling to him, and he comes in with like such protection and excitement, and he's just like, yeah, let's just create change in your life. And that's like why I do the work I do with legacy, and why I'm really interested in helping people with their life purpose, because that's the advice he's given to me. He's like, you have to like live, you're on earth for a reason, and you have to like live and do sort of what your soul set out to do in the fullest extent that you can. And so all of my work is sort of informed by the way that Hades sort of thinks we ought to live.
Yeah. Oh, when you were saying only a few temples, I was like, poor guy. He probably is so nice. Like he just wants to hang out. Oh, yeah. Wow. I love that. I loved how you were saying, like, you're a human, you're here to live. And I love that in conjunction with work, because I think a lot of us have this, just from capitalism again, like just getting so dissociative when we go into work and it's just some shit we have to do, and not having a career or a job that we feel is full of life. And I think, like we're here to live and to vibe and to experience and to have fucking fun. Like life's literally wild. Like at least let's have fun with it and do something that makes you feel good. So I just like to hear that when talking about careers, because I feel like, I don't know, maybe I have like a nihilistic view of the workforce, but I love hearing that. That's awesome. I have one other mythology thing that I was curious about. Oh gosh, hair's stuck in my ring. So I did get really into Persephone. A couple months ago, I was just like, let's research her. Let's see what she's about. And there were, I read a lot of different mythologies, or I guess not mythologies, but takes on the Hades and Persephone. And there were some people who were like, very like, Hades is a bad guy, he's predatory. And then there was one where it mentioned like, yo, the gods don't have to eat. There's this idea that Persephone like took the pomegranate seeds willingly because she really wanted to stay there. And I thought, yeah, we love to see like an independent woman making choices for herself. And I was just curious, you obviously have a lot of research within the mythology. Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting hot topic. Personally, like I really believe that Persephone sort of was like liberated by Hades. I mean, that's my personal sort of belief on the topic, where like sometimes I retell the myth sort of as this, where I say Persephone was living in the meadow in Sicily where Demeter placed her, and it was sort of a fact that a lot of the gods knew that she was born, but they had never met her. And like Demeter was sort of keeping her a secret and sort of like hiding her away. And her name before her name was Persephone was Kore, which actually means like child, basically. It translates to child in Greek. And so her name was like literally child or like maiden or something along those lines. And Hades, the way I tell the story is Hades was like, you know, he had his helmet of invisibility on. He was like surveying the land because technically like he does have dominion over the land and, you know, sometimes like the growth of like certain fruits and certain vegetation, as well as like the crystals and like all of the wealth under the earth, which is so cool. And so I always say that he was like out surveying this wide stretch of land and he came across Persephone, or she was known as Kore back then. And he was like, hey, you must be the goddess that everybody keeps saying that was born, but we've never met you. Like, I've never seen you. Like, are you okay? Like, do you need help? Like, what's going on? And she's just kind of like, I don't know. Like I've never been out of this meadow. Like, I don't know what to do or what to say. And so then from there, he's like, all right, well, I have a plan. You know, we're gonna take you to the underworld. We're gonna like, I'll marry you. I'm single. Like, I've been looking for a wife. Like, I will marry you so that you can see somewhere else and like live somewhere else. And obviously he was like in love with her too. So that definitely played into it. And so that's sort of how I like to tell that particular story. But I also think that there is a lot of merit in diving into all the different like varying ways that story is told, because Hades does rule over the shadow and he does rule over isolation and like scorpionic themes and like things that are really difficult, and all the dark sides of like the Scorpio kind of personality, which can be very obsessive. And I do feel like a lot of Hades devotees are really quick to be like, didn't happen, nothing like that. And truly, do I believe that it happened that way? Not really, but I think that there's such a, it's so interesting that so many people uphold that story, and that's like the societal story that we tell. That's like the tale that's been passed on. So there must be some truth in the collective unconscious of how we view that story. And I think that it's a big part of who, like, partially what he represents. So I do feel like you sort of have to engage with the shadowier side of the story, which is, you know, he like abducted her and took her into the underworld, and she didn't want to be there, and they sort of had to work things out from there.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for your retelling. That was really cool. Yeah. And for telling us all about the myth for anybody who didn't know. Yeah. Okay. I had a thought that came up and now I'm losing it. Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. I was curious if you had ever seen the musical, The Phantom of the Opera.
I haven't, but I was in chorus when I was like in high school, and we sang a lot of Phantom of the Opera songs. And so I kind of have like the gist, but I haven't seen it.
Okay. Well, that's something I think of. So I was a theater kid. I actually got my bachelor's in theater performance. So that's embarrassing. But so I love Phantom of the Opera, and I feel like that story reminds me of it because it's like this really beautiful, like young adult, and she's perfect and pure and pretty, but she's like trapped in a world where she doesn't really love it. And then she meets this guy, and the Phantom of the Opera is like, he's like disfigured and wears a mask because he's been cast out by society. So he really, really represents the shadow, and like has a literal like underworld beneath the theater, and this super sick, oh, you've got to watch it. It's like the coolest little like, I don't know, basement. And they fall in love, and it's like, oh, it's a great story. That's my random rant about that. I think it's really similar. And Gerard Butler plays the Phantom in the movie version. It's very attractive. So
yes,
it's really
fun.
I
love that.
Yeah, I'd love, if you do watch it, I'd love to hear if you see the connection, just like with your knowledge and stuff. But Okay, cool. Well, I think I just have one last question, one last thing to chat about. And I'm really just curious about like the work that you do, because you do the House of Hades Society, you have a legacy lounge, and then you do, I believe, offer readings. I'm not sure if you're offering readings to people who aren't in those, but I was just curious about like what it is that you do, if you could share that with people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I feel like House of Hades Society, if you're looking for just like an introduction to my work and just a way to hop in right away, House of Hades Society did just open up as like my mentorship program. I've been running it over the course of the last year as sort of like a cohorted group program, but now I've kind of opened it up into more of like a monthly or like annual membership where you can come. I'm going to teach classes and lectures about Hades, both like, through philosophy, through, mythology and like ancient history, as well as like occult classes around like how to use Hades in devotion, or how to work with him in devotion, and how to use like his underworld magic and that sort of stuff. So that's all happening in House of Hades Society. And then part of it is also sort of like this almost like group coaching container where the group meets once a month, and we chat, and we sort of chat about how we're integrating Hades's magic and transformation into our lives, and how we want to invite more transformation. So it is a really, really cool, fun program that I've gotten nothing but like positive feedback from. Like everybody that has took it has been like, I feel so changed afterwards. And it was surprising to me at first, because I was like, I just want a way to share Hades magic. But then I'm like, oh yeah, Angelica, like Hades is very transformative as a force, so no wonder like when people start working with him in this group, it's like his energy just sort of starts to permeate and like change everyone's life. So it's very interesting. And then, yeah, my other main way to work with me is just through my one-to-one coaching. So I have, like a 3-month and a 6-month coaching package where we, dive deep into your legacy. We look to manifest it as much as we can in your life right now. And just sort of like, it's like part, energetics and magic of manifesting your life's purpose, part sort of like a limiting beliefs coaching package where we like really go into the corners of yourself that that might not believe you have what it takes to really stretch into your life purpose. And it tends to be for entrepreneurs and creative people, and people that are looking to sort of expand into a really big life purpose that often has to do with career. Not always. I do have some like writers and people that are just doing it for personal growth, but yeah, it's for leaders and visionaries, and that's the two main ways to work with me right now.
Yeah, I've been watching, and the House of Hades looks so cool. I'm so interested in everything that you do. It's just really, really neat, and I love I just feel so intrigued by Hades, and I feel like I've been getting some symbolism here and there. And so, yeah, I think this is like the beginning of my journey with that. So yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on. If you're able to let everyone know where they can find you on Instagram, if you got a website or anything, whatever that is.
Yeah, absolutely. So my Instagram is Angelica Cresci. And there's so many scam accounts going on. So yes, that's my only account, Angelica Cresci. Yeah. No like dashes or anything. And as far as the website goes, my website is riverstyxwitch.com. So it's like River Styx, like the river in the underworld. So it's RIVERSTYX witch.com. And yeah, Instagram is probably like the main place that I hang out, but I do tweet and like am on TikTok here and there.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'll make sure to put those in the show notes so that everyone can get there, because it is crazy out there, you guys, like with the scammer accounts, like they really put like one extra eye and think they did something, like it's crazy. So awesome. Thank you so much for being on, This was so fun to talk about. I really, really appreciate that. And so everyone listening, make sure to go follow and check out her stuff, and maybe join the House of Hades Society if you want to learn more about Hades. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And that is all from us today. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I